All right, so if you don't already know, Politicon is a political convention essentially where it's really just a bunch of pundits coming together and having a convention. There are different panels, which means that there's going to be like groups of people talking about different stuff. I think last year there was like this essentially a corporate Democrat versus real progressive panel where Cenk was like the only Bernie supporter or whatever. And I think Anna had the same situation. I don't know if that was I think that was the same year. But they have those panels and they also have debates, and sometimes they have headline debates that they do where it's like the biggest debate of their thing. Last time it was Cenk Uygur and Ben Shapiro. They had the original venue for the debate, but they decided to move the venue because I guess either too many people showed up or they wanted to move for more capacity was the reason. So we know because of the political lineup, and they've all talked about it now, Sam Seder, David Pakman, and Kyle Kalinske will all be attending, which is awesome because it'll give more representation to the true progressive movement, the Bernie-crat social democracy type of advocacy, and it won't be, you know, a lack of representation. On top of Sam Seder, David Pakman, and Kyle Kalinske, I think the Young Turks, you know, Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur, I think are both going again. So we have found out that Kyle Kalinske is going to be debating Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter has been going to Politicon since the foundation of Politicon, I believe. And so they're going to be having a debate. We don't know what panel Kyle Kalinske is going to be on, but what does that mean? Well, that means that who could possibly debate him. There are more options for people to debate him, although I don't know who would. But because Cenk's already done it, obviously, I don't think Anna's going to do that. Maybe she does. I don't know. But there's David Pakman and Sam Seder left. So what I have done is I have put up a poll on the community tab of the channel, and you can vote because I want to see who you guys think is going to be who's a better option, who would be the better pick to debate Ben Shapiro. Now, although I'm a little bit torn, I think I'm going to have to take David Pakman when it comes to who I'd rather have debate Ben Shapiro. Now, that's sort of for a few reasons. One of them being that David doesn't really get too flustered, and he sort of keeps his pace and his sort of thought process pretty well. And I also think that he's a pretty skillful debater. He does a lot of debates. He's done a lot of debates. In fact, he's actually done a debate with Ben Shapiro, so that's something else that you can sort of put under his belt. And in that debate, it was pretty darn clear that really the best thing you could come away with was it was essentially a draw, but really it wasn't a draw at all. It was very clear that, you know, he really had Ben Shapiro unable to be able to actually, you know, explain and articulate what he was trying to say in his thought process. He literally got lost in the sauce. He got lost in the thought process. So first, what I want you guys to see is a clip from his debate with Ben Shapiro.
If we are able to draw lines somewhere, the lines that the NRA wants to draw are no more or less legitimate than the lines President Obama or Dianne Feinstein may want to draw.
Disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because I think that you can draw lines based on the principle. Now, the Second Amendment was not written for muskets. It was, and proof is in the pudding. If we're going to be that literal about the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment says arms, it doesn't say muskets. If we're going to assume that it just meant stuff that happened at the time, then Piers Morgan has no right to be on TV because there were no TVs in 1789. And the freedom of the press doesn't use a printing press. So, I mean, as long as we're going to go there, we may as well go all the way. And that's
so then where do we limit to RPGs or nuclear arms? Those are arms, right?
No, they're not actually. If you look at the Second Amendment doesn't guarantee a right to own a warship, right? It doesn't guarantee you a right to own a cannon. Even back.
But hold on a second. One of the main tenets of those who are constitutionalists is that the Constitution only says what you can't do, and the Second Amendment doesn't say you can't own a warship.
No, correct. No, the Second Amendment. No, that is true. The Second Amendment doesn't
They're negative,
say that.
Right? So in other words, it's not actually. You're wrong on that.
It prevents the government from infringing in areas where it says that you can't infringe. So that is actually this was the argument about the Bill of Rights at the time. Actually, the Bill of Rights are kind of different from the rest of the Constitution in that they carve out areas that the government cannot go. That's why there was argument about the Bill of Rights. The Constitution is a document of negative liberties. The Bill of Rights is also a document of negative liberties, but it carves out actual spaces where government can't go. That's why, I mean, you know this. This is why there was the debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists said there's no point to a Bill of Rights. It actually infringes our liberty because it says to the government that it can go all these other areas. The Second Amendment said, when it says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, it also, it doesn't, first of all, the Second Amendment applies to the federal government, not to the states. And that is a huge thing that has been overlooked in constitutional history. But even assuming that it applies to the states, the fact is that the state has always had and always did have the ability to prevent private citizens from owning cannon. I mean, there were laws on the books when the Constitution was written preventing people from owning certain types of weaponry.
So the argument you're making now is actually that the Second Amendment does not prevent anybody from owning warships, but it's the states superseding that Bill of Rights that would allow them to prevent someone from owning a warship. It's getting a little muddled, right?
It's not, though. I mean, that's correct. The Second Amendment doesn't prevent you from doing anything. I mean, the First Amendment doesn't prevent you from doing anything.
So you're okay with the states drawing the lines on what guns you can have, but not the federal government?
It's a restriction on government, right? I mean, the Second Amendment is not created as a restriction on individual. It's not a law about what guns you can and cannot own. It's a restriction on what the state can do.
All right, so as you can see there, David seemed to have done pretty well. Especially in, sort of getting Ben Shapiro off his game. He really wasn't able to sort of stay intact and sort of broke apart and got kind of loose. So it seemed to be the case that he did that pretty well. So I'm going to give David Pakman the edge here, but I do want to talk about Sam Seder as well. Now, Sam Seder, of course, he is also a pretty skilled debater. He knows a lot. I think I'd probably say he's the biggest policy wonk out of everybody, most likely, because he knows the details of more laws and different things like that and more information. But he does have the tendency to stutter quite a bit, where it's like almost part of his part of his apparatus of when he's speaking. He's like, these really long pauses. I don't know if that would really show up in the debate anyways, although that's sort of a more minor thing. But it wouldn't really be a bad option if Sam Seder were to debate, Ben Shapiro. I don't think it would end up poorly. But to sort of, if you haven't seen Sam Seder's debates with libertarians, you're really missing out on some absolute pure comedy, because it is legitimately some of the absolutely funniest shit that I've ever heard in my entire life. He does these debates with libertarians. Some people are just idiots, who call in. They're just really dumb. But if you haven't seen, first of all, prefacing that, if you haven't seen the Libertarian Party debates during the presidential primary that they had, it's extremely embarrassing. Whether it be, basically Gary Johnson, he said, I'd like to see some competency exhibited by drivers, essentially saying, hey, I definitely support driver's licenses. Obviously, that's a topic of contention in the Libertarian Party, and so he said he supported driver's licenses while everyone else said no, and then everyone started booing the shit out of Gary Johnson, which is crazy because driver's licenses are such a obvious bonehead yes type of thing. And another one of the candidates, whose name was Daryl Perry, he's pretty insane. And, what he said is, oh, what's next? Are they going to make us have a license to make your own toast in your damn toaster? So he was going, he's an absolutely insane guy. And it was just a complete shit show. And I recommend you definitely watch it. I really recommend you watch it. Gary Johnson said that, we should maintain the Civil Rights Act. And that got a lot of boos. And, one of the candidates was asked, about the roads question. He said, we don't need roads where we're going. We have jetpacks. So that was pretty fucking weird. But getting back to Daryl Perry, because that's the one we're going to be looking at here. So if you want to see, I'm going to show you guys a clip of Sam Seder having a debate with this crazy, insane man, Daryl Perry. they're going to be talking about, what you're going to be seeing is they're basically talking about, they're sort of running through the implications of this libertarian dreamland, and this sort of, fully theorized nation. And Daryl Perry is going to argue for why, he wants to secede to make I think he says like the great nation of Daryl or some shit like that. But check this out.
Rights of another person, I should be able to, claim the free state of Daryl.
Okay, but aren't you that property that you're living on, that land? Is that really yours? How did you get that property?
Well, based on the current paradigm, nobody can really own land, because try not paying your local property taxes. After 3 years, some local government will come, kick you off of your land, and sell the land to the highest bidder. So currently, no one can own property.
Okay, so you have no property here. So I don't understand, how would you possibly secede?
Well, right now, you're not allowed to. Right now, if you go buy a piece of land from someone and you say, I don't want to be part of the town, I don't want to benefit in any way from any of the supposed services that the town provides, I'm not going to send you any money, I'm not going to use your schools, I'm not going to use your fire department, I just want to live on my land and be completely self-sufficient and not pay your taxes. After 3 years, the town would come, kick you off of your property, and seize your land.
How would you know it's your land? How would you prove that it's your land?
Well, in theory, you would have a property deed, because that's what happens when you buy property.
Who would issue the property deed?
You get a deed. Well, right now, there are governments that issue those things. And what I'm saying is we're talking about the current paradigm of how could you own land? And there are things right now that exist. When you go buy land, you get a deed for the land.
Right.
If you're talking about what would happen in a free society, then there would be competing agencies probably that would issue such deeds.
Which one would
You're
be
asking me to centrally plan liberty, and that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in,
Wait
Sam,
a second. I want to hear about that other paradigm.
Right. Hold on, Sam. Hold on. Let me finish my thought, and if you keep trying to piss me off, I will disconnect from the call. So you're asking me to centrally plan liberty. I'm not interested in centrally planning liberty. I'm interested in promoting the idea of human freedom.
Okay, so wait a second. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm just trying to figure out.
I think you absolutely did mean to upset me.
No,
I think you absolutely do want to try to push me into a corner to where you can say, see, you don't have the answers of how freedom works. Damn it, Sam. Nobody has all the answers on how freedom works. That's why freedom is so important, because people should have the right to make decisions that other people might not agree with. That's why I support freedom. That's why I love freedom.
Well, Daryl,
because I'm smart enough to know that I don't know how to run your life.
Well, Daryl, I'm not asking you how you're going to run my life. I'm sorry. Listen, I don't mean to get you this upset.
You're asking me how everything
I'm just asking
will work
how
in a
people
free
will
society.
know. I'm just asking, like a simple thing, like how do you establish property rights in this other paradigm, this other freedom paradigm that you're talking about? You have competing agencies that are going to offer deeds, and I'm just curious as to how do we determine which one is going to be the deed that is actually the one that is recognized? I mean, how do we establish these things that you're talking about?
Well, let me ask you this question, Sam. If you have 5 people that issue deeds to 5 different agencies, or rather 5 different agencies that try to say different people own the land, there would be some kind of coming together to try to figure out exactly who the owner is. If you've got, let's say, 4 people recognize Sam owns this property and one says Daryl owns this property,
right? Well,
nobody is really going to wind up trusting the one that goes against the grain unless there's, some provability of corruption going on. But
well, who would be the arbiter of this? Who would be the arbiter of this? See, here's my problem: is that
See, this
I
is
know.
what- this
Now,
is
hold,
where you're
Daryl.
wanting me to
Daryl.
centrally plan liberty
You
again,
gotta let
Sam.
me. You gotta let me finish now. Okay. This is
I
my.
don't know who the arbiter would be. I don't know what size font they would use on the paper. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a
how
different. That's a
legible
different.
The signature would
That's
be.
a different.
I don't know
That's a
what
different
time
issue.
the sun will set on June 31st of 2102.
You can look that up
I don't
online.
know these questions.
But Daryl,
Again, man, as I stated, that debate is just pure comedy, and I've watched it like a couple times over, and especially the part where like he rage quits and just sort of leaves, and he gets super mad, and Sam Seder sort of has to keep his laugh. He does have to keep his laugh in. It's honestly one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen, especially things that are not meant to be comedy, but libertarians for some reason produce the best level of comedy when it comes to, you know, presidential elections and different things like that. But, you know, anyways, basically stating that Sam Seder is also very experienced, and he's good at debating, no doubt. But I feel like because of David Pakman's sort of demeanor, I would say, and Sam Seder's stutter, I think that David Pakman would end up being a better pick to debate Ben Shapiro, especially considering that David Pakman's already debated Ben Shapiro on gun control, and it seemed to go pretty darn well. So I just think that I'm not giving a huge edge to David Pakman, but if I had to choose, I'm definitely going to go with David Pakman. Now, you guys can let me know down below in the comment section also, as well as, like I said, I have made a poll on the community tab of the channel. You can go and vote there. If I remember, I'll leave a link to it, but I'll probably forget, to be honest. But I give the edge to David Pakman. Let me know who you guys give the edge to.